and welcome back to That's a Wrap. As always, I'm Shannon, and for today's episode, we are going to talk about After We Collided, the second movie in the After franchise. And I do want to go ahead and let you guys know that there may be spoilers in today's episode, so listener discretion is advised. So, After We Collided has some cast shakeups, so let's go ahead and discuss those shakeups before we get into the movie. So, Ken Scott is no longer played by Peter Gallagher, but was replaced by Rob Estes from 90210, the remake, the one with Shanae Grimes, and Melrose Place, the 90s version, not the remake. Karen Scott is now being played by Karima Westbrook. We are being introduced to Trish Daniels, who is Hardin'S mom. She is played by Louise Lombard from CSI Las Vegas, the original, like the one that started in 2000 that kicked off the whole franchise, not the remake or the reboot. Dylan Sprouse is playing Trevor. Charlie Weber is playing Christian Vance, and you guys may know him from How to Get Away with Murder. So the film picks up after Hardin and Tessa break up, and Hardin wakes up in his car and is approached by some random homeless man. And the guy tries to ask Hardin a question, but Hardin refuses. And as irrelevant as this is, it does become relevant at the end of the film, so keep this in mind. Tessa is also starting her first day as an intern for Vance Publishing, where she meets Trevor after calling him an asswipe. So he's in the elevator and the door shuts and she's yelling, hold the elevator, wait. And the door shut and she hits the door and calls him an asswipe, and then the doors open and they kind of just stare at each other. And for some reason, Dylan Sprouse looks good. I was never like a Sprouse groupie growing up, but he looks really good as Trevor. So props to him for really getting into this role. For some reason, when I found out that he was going to be in this film, I didn't think he was going to be able to pull off Trevor, but he was able to, so I'm going to give him props on that. So, of course, Tessa is a goody-goody. She's a high achiever, and naturally, she is already a worker bee in the office. She gets set up in a very cluttered office that is essentially, it looks like it's just a storage room because there's so much shit in it. And she ends up cleaning the office up, and then she ends up passing out at her desk after working well past her time. So the last time we see the clock, it's almost midnight, I believe, if not past midnight. She's still there, she's still reading. And naturally, she doesn't want to go home. Her and Hardin are broken up. So the next day, Christian Vance wakes her up after reading her notes and all of the manuscripts that she read, and she is shocked. Here she was, her first day, passed out at her desk because she stayed the night. And he ends up being impressed by Tessa's notes and her work ethic, that Christian ends up inviting her, Trevor, and his girlfriend / secretary, Kimberly, to a Seattle work event. So we're going to fast forward through a couple of scenes because nothing exciting really happens. She's in the same clothes that she wore to work yesterday. She hasn't showered, and none of that stuff. Vance tells Kimberly to take her shopping to help Tessa pick something out. Nothing exciting happens. So we're going to go ahead and fast forward to the nightclub where Tessa and Trevor are taking shots, and they're drinking with a business guy who they are trying to convince convinced to invest in Vance Publishing. And he apparently doesn't speak English, and Trevor is translating for him. And then he comes with this huge ass bowl for all three of them to drink out of. And then he just says, in an American voice, "We're gonna get fucked up." They do win him over though. So props to Trevor and Tessa. They do win him over, and he does invest in Vance Publishing. So Tessa continues taking shots and all and drinking, and she ends up dancing with a stranger, kisses him, calls Hardin drunk. Hardin then tracks her down and shows up at the hotel. Tessa and Trevor at this point in time have been in the room talking and hanging out and drinking wine, which Tessa accidentally spills on his pants, and as a result, Trevor now has no clothes on because they are trying to dry his clothes and make sure the wine doesn't stain. Hardin, who at this point is at the hotel, ends up finding Trevor in the bathroom. And Trevor leaves, and Tessa and Hardin start fighting. And naturally, they, of course, have makeup sex. So the following morning, Tessa breaks it off with Hardin again. And fast forwarding a little bit, Tessa goes back to their apartment, thinking Hardin left for the holiday to go back home to England to be with his mom. But she ends up getting caught by Hardin and his mom because Trish wanted to come to the States. And because Trish still believes Hardin and Tessa are still dating, Hardin and Tessa agree that they will pretend they are still dating for his mom's sake. During this time, Tessa and Trish get close, and they talk a lot about Hardin. They talk about his nightmares. They talk about how his nightmares are triggered from him seeing his mom getting sexually assaulted, which is due to the fact that Ken owed these group of people money that he never paid for, and they showed up at the house wanting Ken, but found Trish instead. And at this point, Ken was a raging alcoholic and really didn't care about anybody but himself. Tessa then goes to visit her mom, finds out that her mom and Noah have been talking, which is so completely strange. And Noah greets Tessa and accidentally tells her that her father is back in town, and this results in Tessa and her mom getting into another fight over the phone this time, and Tessa ends up leaving to go back home to Hardin. In the fight, it is brought up that her mom thought they were past this little hiccup and that she was moving on from Hardin, and it ends up not being the case at all. She does not tell her mom that she is actually still talking to Hardin, but outside of their apartment, Hardin is out there greeting Tessa when she comes back home. So Ken and Karen they invite Trish, Hardin, and Tessa to their house party for Christmas, and as a result, Hardin did not want to go to begin with. Trish convinces him to go, and he ends up getting drunk, and he actually punches Ken after Ken talks about his new life and how grateful he is for everything he has. And the way that they filmed this makes it seem like he was kind of throwing it in Trish and Hardin's face. After all, he did leave them with nothing, and he was an alcoholic. Like, he didn't care about them because he was an alcoholic. And now he's a chancellor of a college and has this huge house and pictures of his new life everywhere. And Hardin hates it. Hardin still holds a lot of animosity towards Ken for what happened to his mom years ago. He also holds a lot of animosity towards Ken for leaving them. So after Hardin punches Ken, Trish gets pissed off and ends up going back home to London. And Hardin and Tessa also fight. And as a result, Hardin destroys the apartment. He continues drinking and just completely destroys the apartment. And Tessa wakes up in the morning and sees the aftermath of everything that happened and walks out and goes to work. Mind you, this is the day after Christmas now. So this is now like December 26th when most places are not open. I have never worked at a place where we are off the day after Christmas, but I guess that exists. So Tessa gets to work and she finds out that Trevor is also working. And they have a little bit of a conversation on the way up to their floor, and they end up eating lunch and just have a talk together. Trevor advises Tessa that the relationship with Hardin won't end well. He kind of compares it to his sister and her drug use, and how nothing good has came out of that toxic relationship. And Tessa just replies with, "You're wrong." She honestly believes that her and Hardin are going to last and make it through everything. So while they are eating lunch, we actually find out that Vance is opening another office in Seattle, and Trevor is actually transferring to be the head of finance. And, Tessa seems kind of bummed, like excited, but kind of bummed that he's going to be leaving. However, we fast forward to New Year's Eve, and she gets a phone call from Vance. And Vance offers Tessa a job at his Seattle location. And he full out offers to cover her tuition, moving expenses, all of that for her to move to Seattle. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, bitch, why are you not going to take that? You can tell that she's not going to take it. And I'm just like, why? Why? I'm in college for my second bachelor's degree, and I would kill to have somebody sit there and be like, oh, I'll cover your tuition. Bitch, you take that. You do not put that on hold for a guy. Sorry, you don't do it. I don't care how in love you are. Take it. So there's that. She says that she's gonna think about it for a little bit, and Vance even offers to have Hardin join her. And we do find out that Vance and Hardin do know each other. We actually find out before his mom leaves to go back to England, we find out that Christian Vance actually helped Trish and Hardin after Ken had left. And as a result, Vance is actually really close with Hardin and his mom. And so it makes perfect sense on why he is like, you can take Hardin with you too. And so, like I said, this is on New Year's Eve, and Tessa and Hardin decide to go to the frat house for the New Year's Eve party. And at this point, they have not seen that group of friends since the first film, where they were in a bar and Tessa found out that Hardin had made that bet, that dare, that he was going to fuck her, have her fall in love with him, and then take it all from underneath her. And so this is the first time that they're all seeing each other. And it's going well. Everybody's having fun. There's no hatred towards anybody. Nobody's holding a grudge until Molly shows up. And then Tessa decides to play Truth or Dare with the crew. And it ends up causing a fight between Molly and Tessa. And it actually results in Tessa throwing a few punches at Molly. And Molly is bloody, and Tessa got into her first ever fight. And her and Hardin end up going upstairs to his old room in the frat house. And they talk, and they obviously have sex. And then they get into another fight. They get into another fight because Tessa thinks Hardin cheated on her with another girl that night. However, we find out that it is because he was apologizing to that girl, which it does not go over in the movie, but it is in the book, well, the fan fiction. Like I said in the last episode, I'm not sure how much of the fan fiction made it into the actual books, but what ended up happening was that girl was actually another conquest of his in the past. Which, if I remember correctly from the fan fiction, I believe that girl is actually supposed to be in England. So, if I remember correctly from the fan fiction, he did the same dare to a girl in England and ended up destroying her life completely because of it. And he ends up apologizing to her when he's in England. However, in the movie, she is in Washington State, and it occurred on the campus, so he goes and apologizes to her. But Tessa overhears her saying, I don't kiss and tell, so you don't have to worry about me telling anybody. And then Hardin finds out that she is potentially moving to Seattle for that job opportunity that Vance gave her. And they fight. He stays at the frat house and she goes home. She wakes up in the morning, he's not there. She gets into her car and drives around trying to find him, is calling him, trying to get him to answer his phone. He wakes up on the couch of the frat house and finds out that his phone is dead, asks the same girl from the night before if she has a charger, which she does. So he gets into her car, charges his phone, as well as she is taking him to either go home or try to find Tessa. As a result, he ends up calling Tessa. Tessa threw her phone on the floor of the car, so she tries and continues to try to reach it, but she can't reach it from the driver's seat. A car honks. She goes because the light is green and ends up getting T-boned. And ironically, Hardin rolls up on the crash and gets out of the car and chases after the ambulance. However, he is not able to get to it in time. So, as a result of seeing this crash, he's freaking out, trying to get in contact with Tessa, calling her phone, calling hospitals, all of that stuff. And finally, Trevor answers Tessa's phone and advises Hardin to stay away from her if he really loves her. And this results in him leaving for England to go back home. And Tessa ends up arriving at the apartment looking for him later on in the day and finds a note, very sweet written note from Hardin, and saying that he has moved back home. So while he is home in England, Hardin's mom convinces him to go back home and attend Vance's going away party and to see Tessa. And she explains to him, you need to stop having this hatred and this grudge against your father. I have moved on. I have found someone else. I enjoy where I'm living. I have a boyfriend, the next door neighbor. You know, life gets better when you stop holding this grudge. And he ends up going back home to Seattle or Washington State, and Vance actually helps him try and get Tessa back. And he sees Tessa, and Tessa sees him, and she drops the class and ends up, from what we assume, she ends up getting into a Uber and driving off, and Hardin goes after the car. However, we find out that it was not Tessa in the Uber, and he is now on the ground in the grass, and Tessa is up on like the balcony type thing at Vance's house, and she walks down and says to Hardin, "You're just never gonna leave me alone, are you?" And at this point, she was actually attending the party with Trevor. And Trevor went off somewhere. I don't remember if he went to the bathroom or something, but he went off somewhere. And he ends up coming back. He comes out on like the terrace where Tessa was. And he ends up seeing Tessa and Hardin getting into an Uber together. And you kind of see the look of disappointment on his face that she is getting back together with Hardin. She is going home with Hardin, and he is left alone. And the movie then ends with a homeless guy confronting both Tessa and Hardin. Hardin throws him up against a wall, and Tessa finds out that this homeless guy is actually her father. So, now that I have discussed the recap of the second film of the After franchise, let's go ahead and just talk about the film itself really quickly. So the film itself was released at the Venice Film Festival in September of 2020, and it had a lot of negative reviews, which is actually ironic because I think this is better than the first one. So it's kind of funny that it received a lot of negative views. With that being said, production was being held again in Georgia. They filmed it in 2019. And it was eventually released on Netflix in December of 2020. However, the reception was still really bad. And even the amount of gross income that the film received wasn't all that great either, which, like I said, is really weird because I personally prefer this over the first one. With that being said, when this film was released in 2020, it was announced at the same time that they would be filming both After We Fell and After Ever Happy, and they were being filmed back to back. So both of these movies were being filmed one after the other. And I was actually following these at this point in time on social media, so I was already seeing how they were filming this, and they were literally filming it back to back. There was no break in between the films. They were filming them back to back starting in 2020. And After We Fell was then released just over a year later in September of 2021. After Ever Happy will be released in September of 2022, and it will be released on Netflix. So with that being said, I'm not going to go ahead and talk about like their box office or anything because the film was completely negative, and I'm not going to get into the negativity of it. I mean, it did make 48 million in the box office, but it was just overall a negative movie, so I'm not going to discuss it. With that being said, I am going to go ahead. I have never watched After We Fell, so when I watch this is going to be the first time that I watch it. So you guys are going to be able to get my full opinion on it from the first time I watch it. And I am actually looking really forward to it because, like I said, this second film is my favorite. Like, I prefer the second film over the first one. So I'm really excited to see how they incorporate her dad into the film now. And be on a lookout for that. And that is all for this episode of That's a Wrap. As always, my name is Shannon, and be sure to go ahead and comment, rate, review this episode and this podcast. Go ahead and give the Instagram a follow. It is just at That's a Wrap _podcast. And in another announcement, I did go ahead and release these episodes on my YouTube channel as well. So I do have a vlogging YouTube channel, and I decided that I would go ahead and post a playlist on that channel dedicated to this podcast. So if you don't want to listen to it on a podcasting app, you can always listen to it on YouTube. So with that being said, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.